untitled.io into your browser, select today's program to participate. Yesterday, we asked our online audiences several questions on Twitter and Instagram. In one poll, we wanted to know, do you feel you have a strong understanding of and control over your personal finances? Only 25% of respondents said yes. Tonight, we want to grow that percentage with the insights from this exciting panel. Research continues to show that women earn less than men, they're less likely to invest their earnings, and many distrust financial institutions. These factors, among others, result in women retiring with 2/3 the savings as men. As women's life expectancies rise and divorce rates continue to climb, 80% of American women will find themselves solely responsible for their finances later in their lives and often for the first time. Despite women's empowerment, there remain some interesting paradoxes when it comes to gender and finances. How can we best bridge the financial literacy gap and demystify money? Our panel this evening will help answer many of these important questions. Mary Kay Devine is the Director of Community Initiatives at Women Employed, an organization expanding educational and employment opportunities for all women. She's also the host of Everyday Negotiating Workshop, which addresses women's economic advancement from the systemic and individual levels. Emily Green is a financial advisor at Elvest, an investment platform built by women for women. She's previously worked at JP Morgan's private bank with high net worth individuals, families, endowments, and foundations. Lindsay Stanbury is the Work and Money Director at Refinery 29. In this role, she provides young women with smart and entertaining financial and career advice, and she's also the author of the new book, Money Diaries, Everything You've Ever Wanted to Know About Your Finances and Everyone Else's, based on the popular series. It will be available for sale and signing during our networking reception after the program through our partner, The Bookseller, just at the back of the room here. And our moderator, Jessica Drost-Yagan, she's the managing partner at Impact Engine, which invests venture capital and private equity for positive societal change. She previously led McDonald's sustainable sourcing strategies and worked in urban economic development. Please join me in welcoming our speakers. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming. We're so excited and already enjoyed starting a conversation in the back for a bit that we had to cut off in order to join you. So we have plenty of great topics here. I think the key headline is, even though we're seeing so much progress among women getting more college degrees, women moving up in certain career areas, there's still huge gaps in how women take responsibility for, feel confident about, and actually are able to advocate for themselves in terms of earning and investing more wealth and earnings. So just a few stats to add to what you heard before. 68% of women continue to abdicate important financial decisions to a spouse or partner. Only 55% of women report feeling confident making long-term financial decisions, compared to 79% of men. Women earn less than men. Men are 4 times more likely to ask for a raise, and when women do ask, they receive 30% less than men. And women are also less likely to invest. So not only are they not earning as much, then they're less likely to invest it later, and then they're less comfortable asking questions about it, and they're less comfortable making decisions about it. So it's all adding up to put us as a gender in a position where we're not going to be able to support ourselves if we need to use that money for important things that we care about. And in fact, I'll admit that personally, I actually didn't take any interest in financial management and investment decisions in my own family until I realized that that money had an impact. What I do professionally is impact investing, which is investing for both financial and social return. And even though I had spent my career in the space of aligning profit and social good, and I worked at places like McDonald's doing that, until I made the connection that my investment dollars, sort of mattered in the world with regard to the social and environmental issues that I cared about, I was one of these statistics that was like, I don't quite understand what they're saying, but I don't care that much to ask questions. And when I did, they were condescending, so I didn't really want to follow up. And so I'd put myself in this category, and I would also add that in my experience working with a lot of individuals and families across the Midwest in the field of impact investing, I've observed dozens of other women in a very similar situation where they just don't have the interest, or they don't want to push back and deal with that sort of condescending tone, but they don't want to advocate in what I say, like, own their money, not just literally legally own it, but own it, like take control intellectually until they realize why it matters. So that being said, we have three amazing panelists here with three very different experiences and perspectives on these topics, and I'm excited to mostly sit back and listen to them and learn from them. So we're going to start with Lindsay, right here to my left, from talking about Money Diaries. So tell us more about the inspiration behind the series and the book, and also maybe how it's continued to grow a larger dialogue about money within Refinery 29's audience.
Yeah, so for people who might be unfamiliar, Money Diaries is Refinery 29's daily financial column where mostly millennial women share their spending for a week, but they also go into details like their salary, their rent, how much they're investing in their 401k, if they even have a 401k, how much they're paying in student loan debt. And it really gives, a bird's eye view into what women are valuing in their lives. But they also go beyond just sharing their receipts. They talk about their careers, they talk about their relationships, they talk about their friendships. And it's just been a really fascinating look at women. And we started this series, we knew that our readers cared about money. They were interested to talk about money. We had seen that. And they were really interested in hearing personal stories. There were so many articles about women and money, but they were from people who were super successful. So giving normal women an opportunity to tell their stories was really empowering. And I think, the old saying goes that women don't like to talk about money, but we found that that's patently untrue at Refinery. And giving them an anonymous platform to be able to do that has been really great for them.
That's great. Emily, going down to the end of the road here. So we've heard about the gender pay gap, and we mentioned it a couple of times earlier already on this panel. Tell us about the gender investment gap, what you've observed in that space, and how it plays into the work you're doing at Ellevest.
Yeah, so our CEO, Sally Krawcheck, ran Merrill Lynch, a lot of the biggest financial advisory firms in the world, and realized after coming off of Wall Street that the problem wasn't really a lot of the things that we all talk about and getting together in conversations and figuring out how we can progress. It was really that women do not have as much money as men. And as we know, we make less money, we live longer, and so we perpetuate the problem here. But a big part of the problem was when we interviewed a ton of women when we were starting Ellevest, is that women keep 70% of their money in cash. And a lot of people forget the power of investing your money and compounding. So you always think about, okay, you have $1,000 and you put it into an investment. You get 10%, let's say. Well, okay, now you have $1,100 and then you get 10% again. So you're getting 10% on more money. And so it's this very powerful instrument that people don't think about. And a lot of women just keep their money in cash. And so what we're doing is, from a woman who has a penny to a woman who has tens of millions of dollars, is allowing them to invest, because we really spoke to a lot of women around the country of all different wealth levels and realized that they just weren't getting invested and weren't having the conversation about it either.
Thanks. Mary Kay, from Women Employed. So according to Pew, 4 in 10 women say they've experienced gender discrimination at work, which could include things like receiving less support from senior leadership, being passed over for important jobs or assignments, feeling isolated. Can you tell us about Women Employed's mission and the types of people that you typically assist?
Sure. So Women Employed, since 1973, our primary mission is to advance gender equity in the workplace. We do this in a lot of different ways and across the economic spectrum. Our fundamental vision for the world is that every woman is treated fairly in the workplace, that she's able to get the skills she needs for that next job she wants, and then is respected for the work she does, so regardless of salary level. And as far as the people we assist, I think a lot of times if someone's not familiar with Women Employed, they think, oh, we are employing women, we're job training, or an education type program. We're actually an advocacy and policy organization. So we don't do direct service, women don't line up at our office. We really try to work on systems level change. So whether that's policies or laws or legislation, So over our history, for example, we helped shape the original federal laws around sexual harassment. We've strengthened anti-pregnancy discrimination laws and tried to make it more fair for women to be more safe in the workplace while they're pregnant. And in just the last couple of years, we've passed paid sick day laws for women and men and all workers here in Chicago, as well as Cook County. And I think, when we think about assisting folks by the thousands or the millions with systemic change, one of our number one priorities is equal pay. And I think I just want to share a couple. I know there were some infographics running for folks when they came in. A couple of them were ours and some of our partners. And I think the voice that Women Employed particularly brings to the topic of equal pay is both ensuring that people understand what it is, but also the severity of impact on women of color. So who here has marked or gone downtown for Equal Pay Day in April? Or that it's a thing, or you've read an article about it? Okay. I'm clearly an activist, and so every single year I do that. So long story short, there's this day that we mark equal pay to say, okay, on this day, this many months into the new calendar year, this is the day the average woman had to work to catch up with the dollar that a white male, non-Hispanic male, as the data point, earned in last calendar year. Well, that doesn't tell the whole story, because when you start breaking out that gender wage gap by race, then you can see that Asian American women make 87 cents on the dollar, white women make 79 cents on the dollar, Black African American women make 63 cents on the dollar. Native women just marked Equal Pay Day on September 27th at 57 cents a dollar, and we have not even reached Latina Equal Pay Day, that is still coming on November 1st to mark 53 cents on a dollar to what the white male earned last year.
So one of the many reasons that go into some of those stats is that, and this is according to a survey by Glassdoor, 68% of women accepted the salaries they were offered without negotiating, compared to 52% of men. So I think this actually applies not just in how we think about salaries and pay, but also how we think about our investment decisions and what's available to us or offered to us or what we might want. In the impact investing space, for example, I've experienced personally, and I've heard many other stories of women who said, hey, I'd like to understand the impacts of my investments. I'd like to do impact investing. And they basically get pushed back right away. Oh, my advisor, for example, said, don't worry, honey, I'll make you lots of money so you can give it away. You're not listening to me.
Right.
And I think that's part of why women don't advocate, right? Because it's not always a pleasant experience. So maybe if any of you have perspectives around why is that, that it's so hard for women to advocate for themselves, whether it's for their salaries or for their investment decisions, and how can we empower more women to do that?
So we always say that if men came together 100 years ago and thought, how can we keep the women down? They would have created Wall Street and venture capital, because it is all men who work on Wall Street and it is all men who work at venture capital firms. And you think about venture capital, and 2% of venture capital funding goes to women. And how scary is that? And so it's just perpetuating the problem here. And so it's really, they've created this environment that women think that, this just isn't right for me. I don't fit into it. And how many women who are extremely successful women who come to us and say, I talked to 3 financial advisors and he just made me feel terrible about myself and told me to go read a book. And these are women who are Fortune 500 CEOs and people who are very powerful. And it's amazing how scared they are to do something. And I think that it's not that women need to change to think about finance, it's that Wall Street and all these institutions need to change how they talk to women, because women are going to control over 50% of wealth very soon. And so it's really, and I think they're going to have to come around to this, or else they're not going to keep all the clients and such. And so it's really that they need to learn how to talk to women about money, because women don't care about Jim Cramer sitting on CNBC talking about Facebook stock versus Apple stock, and
yelling at the screen.
Yelling at you, talking about that. They care about, can I get to retirement? Because money is choices. We always say money is power, but it's really choices. And it's choices. Can I leave my asshole husband? Can I leave my job? Can I do all of these things? And it's all of these choices that you can make. And money is what allows you to get there. And so it's talking to women in the way they want to be talked to.
I'd also say that I think that the negotiating conversations are really hard to have. Like, they just are. Like, I talk in this book a lot about how you just kind of have to, like, you just have to do it. As my old boss would say, you have to put on your big girl pants. And that's not fun, but I always remind people, like, it's literal payoff. You, like, actually get money at the end. So why not? And you know what, you might get no, and that sucks, but also no is not never. And if we don't ask, I was teasing somebody today, like, they can't read our minds. It would be lovely if our boss could read our minds, but they don't. And I think that I have a lot of, like, nefarious and oftentimes, like, conspiratorial thoughts about the state of the way we treat women and money, but I also think that, you know, it is left in our hands to speak up.
Well, and the thing that I think it's both what individuals can do as well as the systems change. So, you know, I lay out the numbers of the pay gap and its cents on the dollar, and then it's also hundreds of thousands of dollars over a career. And so, you know, not only is it like, oh, it's 57 cents, it's 53 cents, that ends up adding up to $800,000 in lost wages, $900,000. The projections around the Latina Hispanic women are over $1 million of lost wages over a 40-year career. And that's even just absent of salary negotiations. That's just like what the employers are paying women. So we really at Women Employed come at it from both and. So one is changing laws. So we feel very strongly, okay, I'm gonna do my own poll here again. Who has ever been asked your prior salary in an interview? Okay, so folks at home, it's almost everybody in the room that just raised their hands. So that's legal. They can say, oh, well, what did you make at your prior job? The impact that that has is for somebody like me that spent my career in social justice work in the nonprofit sector. If one day I woke up and said, you know, I want to try the investment firm. I'm gonna put my foot in the door at a corporate bank. If that boss asked me what I made, my friend over here is laughing. Yes, because it's like, let's make a deal. I would be a bargain. I would be a basement bargain in many of these boardrooms. And then instead of paying me or any other woman for the requirements of the job, the skills, the knowledge, the experience that somebody needs to do that job, that the employer knows those requirements, they know the market, instead then they're just getting deals. And so Women Employed currently is advancing a law called No Salary History to make the question illegal. Because a boss knows what he or she wants to pay, they know the market rate, and they know the criteria. And if you visit @WomenEmployed on our Twitter feed, it is the top tweet that you can, it's the pinned tweet, and you can look at it and get more information about why the specific law, the No Salary History law, is so critical. And we have passed it twice in this state with bipartisan support, and twice it's been vetoed by our current governor. And so we're really making a push in this fall session for our state representatives and senators to help us override it and make this the law of Illinois.
They just passed it in New York.
Yeah, like in the past year.
In the past year, which is
shining
great.
example.
And
yes.
we have to remind people that you cannot ask.
Right.
You know, we really made sure with our readers that they knew, like, and how to prepare yourself if you are living in a state that doesn't have it illegal. How can you work around that question? Because there are ways, I think, to dance around it.
Oh yeah, no, there are
which is
definitely.
important to remember.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, while you're doing your important work and working toward getting this law passed here, we do need women to be able to advocate for themselves and, you know, step up and have the hard conversations. But I would also acknowledge that sometimes there are actual penalties for stepping up and having that conversation. You know, I personally had a situation earlier in my career, for example, where I went from a sort of an hourly kind of consulting rate to a full-time role, and I tried to advocate for myself to say, you know, I feel like it should be this salary. This is the research I've done, et cetera. And this particular boss said, you know, I'm having second thoughts. I feel like I was too generous in that hourly rate. Like, you know, and so that's just one of many, many examples. I'm sure we've all heard some or have experienced it ourselves. But what I would like to talk about is not just how can we kind of coach women on breaking through this, but what about the support system around this? So, for example, if I have employees and I notice the distinction between women and men or how they're handling it, what's the appropriate thing to do? Or what's the rest of the support system? How do we get from here to there without putting all the load on an individual to advocate for themselves?
I mean, in my dream world, we'd move away from this like cloak and dagger negotiating, right? Like we would just have honest conversations. The boss would be like, this is how much I have to pay you. And the person would say, yes, that works, or it doesn't. Right. I know I've had some conversations with women who are working for companies where they just don't negotiate. They offer a salary and you can take it, and they offer men and women the same salary. And they struggle with that because it makes them less competitive, but it also levels the playing field. Negotiating flat out is not fair to women. Like we just don't ever win this battle. What ended up happening with did you leave to me that would be a red flag to like look for a new job.
It was a job I really, really wanted and had created for myself to do, so I stayed. But
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, right? Like speaking of negotiating, you kind of have to like do that dance of like, is the job good enough to take less? It's hard.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think, one of the favorite, I brought up my own book, buy her book, but this is a great, because I do this session called Everyday Negotiating, and we've compiled resources from some of our partners, like the American Association of University Women. This book, Ask for It, and I love it because the predecessor book was Women Don't Ask. So I think she and her co-author went from Women Don't Ask to just ask for it. And one of the punchlines is, if you're not hearing no, then you're not asking enough. And so I think even just trying to help women shift their mindset, like, yeah, they might say no, but if you are fundamentally not asking, then you never get the chance to say yes, and the payout, like the actual increase in dollars.
So we actually always laugh because I'll show you and you can see. So this is our team on the cover of Money Magazine, and you can see it's all women. And our CMO, so you need to surround yourself with people like this to help you with your money. And our CMO pointed out one day that if you turn it around, it is a picture of all men on the back. And because that's, they wanted the women on the front, but if you turn around what they always have, it's all men. So you have to just realize that you can surround yourself with women and people who want you to be empowered and help you and want you to achieve good. And I think people forget that sometimes too. There are those people out there.
I would also say there's some great male allies out there, and talking to men about money is really important, because if they are making more, you want to know their salary and not your female friend's salary who's making less. I mean, that sucks, but that's the reality of it. So, find those men, make friends with them, get them to tell you the details. I usually say, talk about salary ranges. That usually makes people feel a little less awkward.
And you do have to talk about money, and as women we were taught not to talk about money. And you even think about, I've had a lot of conversations with women that you're programmed from when you're young that boys are good at math and girls are good at English, and it's programmed from when you're very young. And women are taught that talking about money is a taboo, and it's gross and icky and you shouldn't do that. But it really is talking to your friends about how much money you make. It really is talking to your friends about investing. It is all those things and how important it is, because it helps you make those choices in life too. What kind of career should I have? Because can I have that career if I only make that much, because that's not the lifestyle I want to live? Or, oh God, my friend in investment banking makes all this money. And it really helps you think about things. And I have a lot of clients who are founders of companies, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize my co-founder had planned all this stuff, and now I'm 2 years behind. And it's amazing, these people who spend all day together and they don't even talk about their financials. And so it's just really making sure that you're talking about it.
So on that topic, kind of moving a little bit from salary negotiations to personal finances, how do you typically start the conversation, or do people come to you with a conversation? And anybody can comment, but I think you two on the ends probably have the most direct experience with this, which is, are you kind of building your market? Are you out having to do speaking and education in order to get women comfortable to start this conversation? Or are you inundated with people who are like, I've been looking for you to have this conversation?
So I'll tell you, I was the first person in our high net worth team at Ellevest, and I came from a very big bank where they think that you can just get clients. And I did leave with my fancy business card being like, oh God, how am I gonna get clients? And when I started at Ellevest, it was a situation that was like, oh my God, how can I don't have enough hours in the day to help all these women. And these were women who were very successful all over the country, who were calling us and saying, I really need help. I met 3 financial advisors, or I had a woman who said I walked into Schwab branch in the middle of nowhere with a multi-million-dollar check, and the guy told me to go read a book. And this is probably the most money this guy was ever gonna see in this branch. And he missed out because he told her to go read a book and told her to go educate herself. So I think that it's a lot of just the listening, because we know women are good listeners. And so it's listening to what these women really want, not just shoving something down their throat. And I promise you that these financial institutions have these charts and books and all of these things just so that you'll just say, okay. And they just want to confuse you to the point that it's like, all right, fine, just do it, because clearly you're smarter than me. And a lot of it is just simplifying it, because it doesn't have to be that complicated. It is something that it's your money. And to me, I always tell my clients, if they don't understand something, they should not do it, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be right for them. And so it should be something that they understand and feel comfortable with and want to do. And so it really is just the listening factor and understanding what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I would say absolutely that it's people coming to us and looking for the financial advice and education, and they're not even uncomfortable about like telling their stories. I think that, the benefit that I have is that I'm kind of a stranger, and they can, I'm not a close friend or a relative or somebody who's going to judge them, so they can really share these incredible stories with me. And granted, then they're published for the world to read, which, I share a lot of my own personal stuff, so I try to balance that out a little bit. But they are really desperate for this information, and it blows my mind that there's still such a lack of response from big financial institutions. And a lot of the pushback that we get at Refinery is, well, you're only talking to women. And it's like, well, yeah, so? I mean, we're only talking to women, but women control so much of their of their family's finances, and even if they're just single and on their own, it just is amazing to me that they're not interested in that. And I guess it goes to show you that that's why there's men on the back of that Money magazine,
Well, it's even when I was leaving JP Morgan, people are like, oh, that's such a niche industry. Like, how is Sally going to do that? And it's like, okay, 50% of the population is such a niche industry to these banks. And I think that's like telling enough that they don't think about it even as half the population.
Yeah. And actually, this applies to all three of you, that you're really only talking to women. Or, I mean, that's kind of who you're serving intentionally, this sort of very small niche population. What are some of the differences you've noticed with regard to how maybe women have been spoken to before about advocating for their salaries or about investing their money or thinking about their money, and how you do it?
Oh, well, I mean, it's been said, it's like, it's not even about money. It's just about being a woman, so be polite and be deferential and don't rabble rouse. And, so it's like fill in the blank of what we're not supposed to do, and then apply that to a workplace that has long been dominated by men, and then also then add in and now speak up for yourself and negotiate. And so we really emphasize on, in the everyday negotiating workshop, I do really specific tools and strategies, because there's, you can say things like negotiate hard for yourself and don't give up and the payoff will be great. But then there's also actual tools and a strategy that you can employ for yourself. And so, we really try to help people with a variety of resources walk through from everything from understanding your worth, and whether that's literal dollars and cents or what you contribute to the company, what your potential contributions, what value you bring from a prior employment situation, doing research, really accurate research that could be online. There's now 50 different online salary, Glassdoor, everything else sites, but also human research and having those conversations with colleagues, people that would know, people everybody in everybody's workplace knows, who are the power brokers, who's up with the boss, who has the insider information, who's been around a long time and just knows things like that. Also, that human factor of research, and then making a plan. Actually okay, so how am I actually going to enter into this negotiations, writing down key phrases, even thinking about things, and I don't think this is being a girl, Like, when do you feel most powerful? Is it morning? Is it evening? Do you have an outfit that makes you feel powerful? Is there a frame of mind that helps you feel powerful? And giving yourself those tools and equipment to then go into negotiations, and then practice, practice, practice. You know, say it out loud in the shower, say it out loud on your commute, talk to yourself in the car, practice with your roommate, your partner. But it's not just like, go get them. I mean, it's like, build your strategy, do your research, and then really practice.
I think for us, it was really, we did a lot of research with women. It was thinking about, again, how women think about investing, and it's not all about the returns and such. It's about what this money means to them and how they can achieve these goals. And so for us, for our clients who put in $10 to our very wealthy clients, it was really making it about what their goals were for these dollars. And then we've evolved over the past year to kind of what you were talking about at the beginning, is being able to reflect your values across your money. And we had a lot of women who come to us and say, I don't want to own fossil fuels. I really believe in the environment. I want to have a gender lens on my portfolio. And things like that that really mattered to women if they were going to invest money. They didn't want it in these companies that weren't doing good for the world. And so allowing these women not only to achieve their goals, but do it in a way that reflects what matters to them was really important. And so I think just really listening to them in that way and building it out has actually even resonated with some men. Like, we have men as clients too, because they come in and say, hey, I want to invest like that too. And so I think it's the way everyone will invest eventually, but for now it's women.
Women must pave the way.
I had quite a few men on this book tour say, but wait, I need this book. And it's like, well, I mean, that's kind of the problem with the industry in general, is they make it very confusing. And I think many men are good at kind of faking it, and women, for whatever reason, don't. And I mean, the way we are socialized and raised, probably. But, you know, I think that they struggle in much the same way we do, and they're not talking about it either. So, like, I encourage, like, let's just all have conversations. That's the only way we're really going to get things better. It can't just be women. As much as I love the mostly women bubble that I live in, like, I know the reality is like, we need men, and that's okay too.
That's okay too. It's the name of your book tour.
Yeah, right?
So Mary Kay, you mentioned some very specific tools that you provide. Wear a powerful outfit, like ask this question, don't ask this question, etc. On the being financially literate side, whether it's investing, just making good decisions about debt, whatever it might be, do any of you have specific actual tools you would recommend? Obviously not go read a book. Well, maybe except that book. But where would you start with, like, a very sort of tactical couple of things for people to do?
Go to Elevest. No, but it's just taking control of what your money is. And a lot of people, you know, they're at points in their life that they forget that at one point they will probably have to manage the money, and that can be for many different reasons, and they depend on their spouse to do it. And so even being in those meetings and understanding what's going on is very important. I can't tell you how many times at JP Morgan I saw books printed, and instead of having John and Jane Smith, it only said John Smith on it, and the wife was never part of the conversation. So just even being at that table, I think, is step one, and really just understanding, where's my money? What am I doing? What am I spending? I guarantee a lot of people in here cannot say how much they spend a year. Every client I ask, they're always like, oh God, and it's always like a 2-week project to figure out what they spend a year. But just knowing those types of things is very powerful, because that also gives you the ability to say, oh, you know what, I could cut out buying breakfast every day, and maybe I could put that money to my 401k, or maybe I could do those types of things. And the little things that you can do, it's just understanding. And then it really is getting invested. Like, and it's not, we will make every excuse in the world to not invest, and I've seen people do it. You know, it's that their brother's sick, so they can't sign a paperwork or this and that. But it's really so easy these days, and it's the more time you waste, the more you're losing. And so it's really just taking that step and getting it done.
Yeah, I would say just ask a lot of questions. Like, we shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed to ask questions. And if you don't like the person that's telling you the answers, find a new person. It takes time. You need to literally invest time in this. But it all goes back to the negotiating. Money is the payoff. So I feel like that's a worthwhile activity to just take the time and ask the questions. And we actually, I think that knowing how much you spend is such a huge thing. And I tease people that you should do a money diary. You don't have to publish it on the site, but actually thinking about I'm totally somebody who swipes my credit card at the grocery store and doesn't look at what the total is. And that's a nice privilege that I have, but maybe I didn't need those name brand cookies or something. Could I be smarter about my shopping?
Did you want to add anything to what you already shared?
No.
Okay. So, and I would add, sort of in the spirit of just ask the questions, that is the first step I recommend to people when they're thinking about impact investing. Is this I'm so overwhelmed and it's never going to be perfect, and what if a company has a lot of women on their board but they destroy the planet? What should I do? And it's it's okay. Just start by looking at what you're already invested in. If you're invested, or asking your advisor can you just tell me, what does this money actually do? Where does it go? And by the way, that actually helps people understand, too, what the difference between asset classes is, and breaking it down from, this terminology that's just used in the financial, management world to, this builds this kind of a building, and this is how the money gets paid back. That's just so much more approachable. And so I totally agree with just asking questions. I would say, maybe that's a good segue to last question before we open it up for Q&A, and getting a little bit personal. So as you've gone through your lives, and a lot of you have kind of led into the careers you're in probably because of personal experiences, if you could share your biggest mistake or most empowering lesson in your own journey. And I'll start just to give you guys time and to set the stage, which is to say, again, on the theme of asking questions, for years, I would go into quarterly or every 6-month meetings with a financial advisor with my husband, and they would speak to my husband, and I would look at the documents, and I wasn't a financial manager. I didn't understand all the different asset classes, and I was so embarrassed to just be explain this to me. Even though it was my money, and I ended up kind of doing research on my own until I felt confident to then go and ask the follow-up question. So I kind of the context, and I find that I think that was a mistake. I wish I had learned earlier that it's your money. It's your money. That's the bottom line. So you should feel free to ask whatever you want. If they're not speaking in your language, that's just not okay. So anyway, what would you guys share?
I wish I had known Mary Kay earlier. I didn't ask for a raise until I was in my mid-30s. I never negotiated. And it wasn't until I was coaching a junior employee for asking for her own raise that I was oh wait, I should do this for myself. It was such a dumb thing. And then really embarrassing story that I tell in the book is that, I worked really hard at this job, and I was really angry and frustrated that they didn't just give me a raise. They had moved me into a different role, but it hadn't come with a raise. And so I had a couple of beers at the office holiday party, and I asked my boss, why hadn't they given me a raise? Which is stupid. That's
one strategy, yes.
What a dumb thing to do. And it actually wasn't her, she wasn't the one who was managing the money anyway. So it was a worthless conversation. But the story ended happily. I did finally figure it out and ask in the appropriate outlet and got a decent raise.
Daytime hours.
Yes, daytime hours.
Yes.
Not while I was inebriated. Yes.
Those Christmas parties. So mine is actually a success story. So I had worked at a prior organization for about 7 or 8 years. I was in my late 20s, so it was my first job, had been there for a while, and I heard a position that I really wanted was coming open. And I knew the qualifications, roughly the experience necessary, so I said, I'm gonna pitch myself. I really wanna get an interview for this. I think I'm qualified. And going back to my theme of research and that it's not all online, so I super used my colleagues' informal knowledge systems, word of mouth, and pretty quickly found out that the the boss was looking at some external candidates from sort of a similar peer organization who I knew for a fact would come in the door making at least $5,000 to $10,000 more than me. And I thought, I really want this job, and I want what they would get paid. And so I prepared, and I lined up skills, knowledge, qualifications, experiences, practiced a little bit, and then really put it out there. And then when he said, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's do the interview. I want to hear you out. I think you could be a good fit. Then in the same breath, I just was like, hey, I heard you were also thinking about looking at some candidates from XYZ. I'm guessing they would probably make at least $5,000 or $10,000 more, so I'd also like to include that in the interview. And he was like, okay. And so I got the interview, and I got the job, and I was able to secure the higher salary. So it works. It works.
It does work.
Not always, but it works.
Yeah, mine's more about salary negotiation as well. When I was at the bank for many years, because I worked hard, I skipped a bunch of years. So I ended up in a position where there were like nine of us at the associate level, and I was like 5 to 7 years younger, and the rest of them were all men. And when it came to get paid, you all get paid the same salary, so it doesn't matter, but then you get your bonuses. And I was also, they grade you, like it's like school, and I was graded the highest. And I knew it, and we all would tell each other, and then we would all tell each other how much we made. And I made significantly, like someone's salary, less money that year. And I took it and went for 2 months and just thought about it angrily and came to work really angry every day. And finally got to the point that I was like, okay, I need to go talk. And my boss was a woman, and I went to her and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't come in here and think about this every single day. And she said to me as a woman, well, you're such a young woman, what would you do with all that money? And
Oh my God.
I should have known then to just quit. But I stayed there for many more years, and I allowed this to continue to happen. And when I left finally, and I told them, okay, like these are all the things you didn't do for me. And I learned then that they're like, whatever you want, how much money do you want, this and that. And you're like, oh, well, okay, this is all I had to do is like tell you I'm gonna leave. But you do realize like how much you're valued when you leave. And I guess if I would just realize this earlier, and I guess I was so scared that they're gonna be like, all right, bye, that I didn't do anything. But you realize you do have more power than you think you do.
Yeah, good lessons. So we are very good at timing ourselves. We have 16 seconds left before Q&A. So we're just going to talk for 16 seconds now. So we have time for Q&A, and I have some here electronically, and then we also have welcome for those in the audience. So let's start here, since we have someone ready to go.
So ready to go. Hi, my name is Ann Greenberg, and I was forced out of a Wall Street job due to a pregnancy because they couldn't leave my job open. I was too valuable. Anyway, so that's my cranky story. Now, when I came back, I became a financial advisor actually here in the Chicago area. But here is my big question, and I've been thinking about this so much. As women, we seem to give our power away to men, especially when it comes to money. So how do we not do that anymore? Sorry.
Anyone want to jump in here?
I mean, I think a lot of it is that the society has created something that they want you to feel like that. So it's just you have to take back your power and say, like, screw this. Like, I don't care. I don't need to go to talk to this guy who's going to talk down to me. I don't need these situations. I don't, I was talking to a woman who works in venture capital on Friday, and she came to me and said, I really need to invest in women business owners because I don't have any in my portfolio. And then I was talking to one of my clients today, and she's like, Emily, I could give her like 50. Like, it's really going out there and practicing it yourself and talking about it. And I think the more that you talk about it in your circle, and okay, I know women who host dinners and they say, okay, let's talk about this. It's not going to change overnight because Wall Street is controlled by men.
There are some, sorry. We seem to be talking to each other, and there's not a lot of men in the audience. So how do we kind of change that conversation too to include everyone? I mean, because I'm always the woman in the room when I go to financial advising, seminars and things like that. And and the men are just very dismissive.
I think that's why you have to bring more women with you. Can you do that? Like, can you bring more women? I think that's the other thing that like we need to remember is like there has been this history perpetuated where there's like a scarcity, like there's only room for one woman in the room and it's going to be me, but it's like actually there's room for other women in the room and I'm going to bring them with me. And like I've had a few men on this tour say to me, you know, it's really intimidating to be in a room with all women, so they feel the same way. So we should remember, like, bring your friends and talk about it. And I mean, I think you're right too. Like, I know so many women who are just saying, like, I'm sick of playing by the rules. Like, I'm gonna start my own thing. And all we can do is support that and try to get, you know, men involved too when we can. But I would bring your friend next time.
I would also say, at least in my experience, while, I mean, it's not easy and it's not everyone, I have many, many men in my world that are fierce advocates. Sometimes actually I feel like they advocate more fiercely than I do for myself. Like, I'll say, this thing happened, and, you know, my husband will be like, that's BS. Like, I can't believe that happened, and like, whatever. Or colleagues, right, will be like, you know, I was invited to speak on this panel, and it's all men. Can you believe that? Like, I told them they should call you. So, and this happens to me very regularly, and I don't know if it's maybe more of a recent thing, but I would say not to discount the fact that I find myself more often than not now assuming that I should expect the men around me to support what I'm trying to do as opposed to the opposite. And I don't know if that's just more like me feeling powerful enough to assume that, or that they're actually more supportive, but I think I would add that to the mix as well.
And I just wanted to add, I think it's also doing these things. Like, I understand there's a majority women in the room tonight, but I feel like our toolbox is passing laws, so true power shifts, like really shifting the power balance, and then facilitating, you know, the workshops that we do around negotiations. So it is trying to figure out, like, how do you equip individuals with tools? How do you fundamentally tackle systems change? And then, meanwhile, recognizing this is really deeply ingrained. Like, one of the, there was a psychological study that a researcher conducted about worth, like in the context of salary negotiations, and it was, like jaw-dropping, unfortunately, clear that the question was something like, what my company pays me defines my worth versus I demand my company to pay me what I'm worth. And it was exactly flip-flopped. So women said their response to that survey was, the company defines my worth by what they pay me, at something like 85%. And then the exact flip-flop, the men said, I tell the company what I'm worth and they pay me, at 83% respondents. So you literally have these exact mirror. So it's all of the above. So it's having the conversations, it's accessing tools, it's changing laws, because the patriarchy is just going to go down hard. They're fighting. They're not going to give up power.
It's also funny to me that this is always a women's issue. Like, if I'm married to, I'm married to a man, and if he knows that I'm making less salary than my male coworker, wouldn't he be upset because that's impacting our family bottom line? I mean, it's the same with like the motherhood penalty and paid family leave, and like just remembering that these are all our issues. Like and like Sally always throws out like the GDP number. Like it's actually good for our economy if we're promoting and hiring and supporting women. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, my CEO, she was the CFO of Citibank during the financial crisis, and she always touts that she's the person who's been fired the most times on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. She was fired from multiple Wall Street jobs, very famously. But she got fired for trying to pay back customers in the crisis, and we all know what the banks did. And so she has a book, and the first chapter of her book is all about, if Wall Street wasn't all white men sitting in that boardroom, would it have been as bad? And I think all of us could say probably not, because they're all sitting there and it's a group think. And so there is a whole problem that not only is it women, we're missing out on a lot of people in these boardrooms that is just causing us to continue this cycle. And it affects how corporations perform and all these things in our lives. And so I think we have to advocate for that. And the men have to advocate to have women. And California just passed a law that you have to. And so
Yeah.
But you talk to I have so many male clients in California, because you go out and you talk there and they're so ready for this to be done. Like they call us and they're like, I want to be part of this. When we have to get the rest of the country on board like that.
So I'm gonna go ahead and take one from the survey system here that was very popular, and I'm gonna kind of build upon it. The actual question is, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, should you still invest? I'm gonna build upon that and say, a lot of our conversations, especially around investing up here, have been around like assuming you have plenty of money to invest, right? So we didn't talk about, for example, like educating yourself and empowering yourself about managing debt, how to manage cash flow, how to deal with crisis if you've unexpectedly been faced with a divorce or something like that. So any specific or different advice you would share with that sort of framing?
I mean, I think that there's different types of debt, so you have to think about what you're paying. If you're paying a credit card debt with 18% interest rate, then you just need to pay it off as fast as possible. But there's also good debt, like mortgages and things like that, that it actually works in your favor. And so it depends kind of where you are on that spectrum, and there's a lot you can read about that now. Like we have things that come out every week that like go about these topics. So it depends on how you're thinking about that. But, I truly think that it's never too early to invest. And this is why we intentionally built our platform, that you can literally put a penny in it, no joke, a penny, because it is this compounding. And so even if you can put $1 every month in, you are able to start investing, and understand and have that feeling of how to invest is very important. And also just being able to grow that over time. So, and it's a combination. I mean, if you have all this 18% debt, then you just need to pay that down as quickly as possible. But if you have, this 5% debt, and you can think about investing while paying it off, it's a very particular situation. But I think it's, you can read a lot about it and think about what's actually right for you.
Yeah, we really recommend making sure you have an emergency fund before you do anything. We did a study at Refinery where we found that 1 in 4 women had less than $250 in their savings account, which is frightening. In the book, we recommend $2,000, which if you break that down over a year is about $5 a day that you're trying to save. So, that's a manageable amount. I know a lot of people say 3 to 6 months, and people say 6 to 12 months. That can just feel like a huge, saving your salary can be really intimidating. So just getting started with that $2,000 can be a real game changer.
But there are hard and fast kind of numbers, and they're scary. And we actually published these, and we got a lot of backlash for it. But it's just the harsh reality of it, and it is by certain times in your life having saved, by the time you're 30, having saved 1 times your salary, by the time you're 40, having saved 3 times. And every time we put these on social media, people are like, how dare you tell me that? But it's something to think about, and even when you hit an age and you're not there, it tells you, okay, I need to do some catching up. Like maybe I don't need to go to those dinners. I come across a lot of women when we speak that, they'll say, I grew up in this wealthy lifestyle, and now I work in media and I make $30,000 a year. And so, but my friends still want to go to dinner every night. And, it's maybe figuring out, having an honest conversation with your friends and saying I can't do this every night. Why don't you come over? And all these little things that you can do that make it more realistic for you.
Well, and I just want to add one comment, because the particular work of Women Employed, looking at women across the economic spectrum, our specialty is not investment, but it's trying to make sure that women are being treated fairly in the workplace. And so a lot of the women for whom we advocate are minimum wage workers. And so, as much as our birth in the 70s and the second wave movement of the women's movement was, opening doors and crashing ceilings and getting women into those corner suite offices, the priorities now are raising the floor. This isn't, so Women Employed, it's like, yep, there are still ceilings to be crashed, as we all know, but it's all about raising the floor. And so if we can get to a $15 minimum wage, if we can ensure that every working woman has access to paid parental leave, paid sick leave, literally not having to make a choice that if she is sick or if her child is sick, she either loses pay at the penalty of also maybe getting other repercussions or fired, or she just stays home and takes care of her kid. and then still gets paid and can go back the next day. And so for us at like a very particular place on the economic spectrum, if we're not doing that and just helping women survive, then they're never going to get the opportunity to thrive.
One more question I think we have time for from the audience. Maybe in the back with a purple or pink sweater.
Thanks. I have two interconnected questions, and one goes to this idea of worth. So I work in the nonprofit sector, which is an overwhelmingly feminized sector, but not a feminist sector, right? And so how do we define our worth in environments where people are seen as fungible and where there's not, society doesn't accord a status or a monetary remuneration on par with the contribution of the work that's done? And that's interconnected to my second piece, which is really about the face of poverty in this country, which is the face of women and largely women of color. And so I think often when we have these conversations about investment or wealth building or asset building, we're only focusing on one component of that picture and not the broader puzzle, which is that all of our experiences as women are interconnected. And so even women who are at the higher end of the earning spectrum, the childcare for those women is being provided by women at the lower end of the spectrum. And so that's one tangible thing I'd love everyone to leave this conversation reflecting on is as we walk out, we're applying these tools to our own financial pictures, in our individualized circumstances, but what are we learning about and engaging in outside of our own particular experience? So sort of those two pieces around the nonprofit sector. One of my colleagues had a conversation with her boss who said, no, we don't have better health insurance. These were intended as pink-collar jobs. So these two pieces around the nonprofit sector and then also around the refracted lens of poverty and wealth.
I'll add one piece in here and then hand off so we can wrap up. To me, the way these dots all get connected, the way, like you said, sort of the women who have the power to invest and have the corner office and the women who are taking care of the kids and cleaning the office are connected. I totally agree with that. And to me, impact investing is part of the solution there, or even if you don't have money to invest, impact consumption, right? So if you have money and you're spending money, even if you don't have a lot, whether you're spending it on investing in something or like buying a latte, being really thoughtful about what that is doing to others, who made it, how did they make it, does it reinforce your values? I think a lot of ways in which when you have money and you use money, people are kind of like doing it blindly or unconsciously, like, oh, I just need this, I need this, I need this, I want this. And I think the way we can connect the dots is to be conscious. If you have money, it has an impact, and thinking about how other people are pulled into that conversation. Any other thoughts?
Well, being a fellow employee in the nonprofit sector, it's literally, one of my colleagues is here in the audience, and we just went to a conference last week that we should just like talk offline about, but it really is this whole kind of disruption in the way the nonprofit industry should approach people and invest in talent, and that you don't have to force employees to experience poverty to serve poverty. And so it's really like, that could be a whole other topic that we could, stay tuned. But yeah, no, we should literally follow up, but there is, so that's part of it. And then two, it's like, wow, in 2018, the boss is like literally willing to say it's a pink collar job and that somebody wouldn't deserve better health care. I mean, I probably sound like a broken record, but it's like, the majority of my colleagues here on the stage are really talking about investing, and we're just thinking from women employed lens of like investing in society. And so it's like, it really is, if you leave this room and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go read the book, I'm gonna check out LFS tools, I'm gonna learn more about impact investing, I would also encourage you to learn more about women employed, because then that's like, go do something. Like if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you know the world does not seem quite right, bingo. And there's things you can do about it. And there's things you can do about it that goes from everything from tweeting and posting on social media and being an amplifier to your networks just to help people understand, because a lot of people do just kind of blindly go through life swiping their debit cards. And then all the way to the spectrum of contacting your legislator or sending them an email or letting them know how their choices impact you personally. So
I also think that it goes back to what Emily was saying earlier, like we have power, like I hate to say this, but like find a new job. Like really, if you're gonna have a boss that's saying it's a pink collared career and that's why we don't have good health insurance, like maybe that's not a great place to be putting your time and resources. I know that's not always an answer that people want to hear, but I do think that that's kind of true. And I think that as I mean, look at what Sally Krawcheck did. Like, she got fired a bunch of times, and then she was like, screw this, and she went and started her own business. Like, more of us need to do that. And then as we're doing it, we need to do what you said. We need to raise the floor. We need to be helping each other. We need to be thinking about how we're spending our money.
Anything to add?
No, I think just you're right, that everything that you do has an impact, and people forget that. And today, you know, Sally said something in a meeting once, and I thought it was very powerful, that everything, you know, when you're investing today, you actually do invest with a impact. Everything you're investing in is with an impact. It just might not be the one you want. You're probably investing with a male financial advisor in a male-run bank, into male-run companies that are in male-run mutual funds and all these things, or you might be invested in fossil fuels, and all these things that you're doing are making an impact, and including where you're spending your money and all these types of things. And so it's just figuring out, are you making an impact in the way you want to? And that's one of the reasons we really try to build out these gender lens portfolios. And it's not just in Fortune 500 companies and making sure that it's in the sales forces of the world that actually hire women and things like that. It's also giving loans to small business owners who are women and things like that, that you're actually, and not only in the US, giving that diaper manufacturer in Peru a loan, and things that are actually impacting women and people. It's not charitable. You're actually helping them get their business off the ground and helping them not only, because when a woman gets $1, 90 cents of her dollar goes back to her family and her community. You know, when a man does, it is way less. And so not only are you helping that woman, you're helping her family, the entire community, by doing that. And so just making sure that everything you're doing has that purpose is huge.
Perfect. A perfect way to end. So please join me in thanking our amazing panelists for sharing their perspectives. Thank you for coming. This is, I thought, a very enjoyable discussion. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. We have a book signing in the back, which Lindsay is going to stay for, so hopefully you can visit more with her. And I think free to mingle in the back and grab a drink and chat more about these important topics. So thanks for coming.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.